Have you ever heard of something called Nuka? Well, this edition of Healthy Living is going to focus on this form of chiropractic. You don't want to miss it, so stay with us. What do you think of when you want to go to a chiropractor? You think of being cracked and popped. Well, this edition of Healthy Living is talking about something entirely different. It is a form of chiropractic, but it's called Nuca, and it's performed here in Paducah, and the next closest place is like St. Louis or Atlanta, so it's pretty special to this area. And I have a doctor here with me who is the Nuca chiropractor. It's Dr. David Chalke. Thanks, David, for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
First of all, we're going to get it all out of the way, the introductions. I have known you for over 30 years.
Yes,
Does
you
it
have.
seem possible? So, calling you doctor you are a wonderful doctor. I've heard from a lot of your patients. But to me, you're
Thank
just
you.
Dave. But anyway, tell the audience a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Yeah. I'm from this area. I grew up in Reedland and played a lot of soccer. And when I graduated high school, I went to Western Kentucky University, played a little Division I soccer, and had a good time. And transferred to Georgetown College, where I got my pre-medical degree. And then from there, I went to Logan College of Chiropractic in St. Louis, where I studied chiropractic and got my degree there.
And didn't you want to be, I said this, a marine biologist? That's what I knew you wanted to be.
Yeah, who knows, I was 7 or 8, I don't know, but I think from the very beginning I knew I liked biology, and that's kind of what led me into the healthcare, model or industry, I guess, if you will, because I always wanted to help people or do something in the sciences, so that's what drew me there.
Great. Well, let's just start out talking about, I didn't even know there was such a thing called Nuca, this form of chiropractic, because I've been to a chiropractor. I have a chiropractor that, is a great guy and has helped me a lot. But actually your mother said, because you're, like I said in the open, you practice here in Paducah. The next closest place is St. Louis and Atlanta. So it's not something that's widely practiced, at least in Kentucky or in our region, right?
That's correct, yeah. Well, ironically, when I went to chiropractic college, I was a little bit different. A lot of the chiropractic students are like their father or mother was a chiropractor, or their grandfather or uncle. So they're like second, third generation chiropractors. So when I went to chiropractic college, I was like really new to everything. So I didn't know what Nuca was either. In fact, I think there's a lot of chiropractors that might not even know what Nuca is. And what I discovered was that there's over 300 adjusting methods in chiropractic.
Really?
Yeah, and about probably, I would say over 90%, probably a real high 90% of chiropractors practice the manipulation type of chiropractic, which I think most people associate chiropractic with.
Where you're cracked and you're popped and twisted.
Sure, that's actually the first couple years in chiropractic college. I was very dedicated to that type of work. I wanted to figure out why we were doing what we were doing, and I learned right off the bat. A professor, Dr. Hillgartner, said, and it just kind of struck me because I was really trying to figure out if I wanted to spend my career doing something like this, and I was really anxious and nervous because this is, like you'll probably cover later, there's some controversy sometimes with chiropractic, and one of the first things that kind of struck me was he said the power that made the body heals the body, and that the nervous system, when it's interfered with, affects how the body heals itself. And what I learned right away is that our job as a chiropractor is to remove that interference to help the body function better. And so essentially what I learned was that I'm not healing anyone, I'm helping them heal themselves. And so that was really exciting to me. And not only has it become, my job, but it's definitely rewarding because I feel like I'm helping people function better and heal. And it's absolutely rewarding. Now Nuca came across later on in my chiropractic career, where actually in chiropractic college, where I was looking for procedures that I could use with babies or infants, or in other words, patients with brittle bones. I wanted different procedures to help
people
them.
with surgeries.
You got it, yeah. And so along the way, after being adjusted for 2 years in chiropractic school, I found that I didn't feel real well, and it kind of didn't mix with my philosophy. I was like, man, I'm supposed to be feeling good and feeling better and healthier, and I never went to a chiropractor before chiropractic school. I didn't have spinal problems that I knew of, right? So I was just I thought it was about neck pain and back pain. And what I really discovered right off the bat, like Dr. Hillgardner taught right from the beginning, is about the nervous system. I was like, this is pretty cool. And so I wanted to be the best I could be at finding nerve interference in the spine, helping the body function better. And when it came to infants and children, and you know, in those special cases we just discussed, I thought, well, I'd want a special procedure for that. Well, it turned out while I was studying those procedures that they felt really good to me. You know, and a lot of people that love chiropractic say, oh, I love when the doctor pops my neck or whatever, you know, even though we're adjusting, we're not popping the neck.
Right.
But those methods, I just stopped doing them because it didn't feel good to me. And my personal experience was that when I was adjusted very gently, and with a lot of the procedures that I studied, that's how I responded well. So it wasn't just good for babies, it wasn't just good for brittle bones or patients with lots of surgeries. I felt like, man, this is something that I could help a lot of people. And that's when I started getting into the gentle side of chiropractic. Now, Nuka was really important to me because what happened was, all the way through chiropractic school, and if you talk to any medical doctors or chiropractors, and you say, well, if you want to affect the nervous system, what is the most vital area of your spine? And everybody will tell you atlas. And just for your viewers, the atlas is the top bone in your neck. It sits right underneath your skull. And that's where your brainstem drops down from the skull and goes through the neck to form your spinal cord. And so it's very common knowledge, at least in medical circles and chiropractic circles, that the upper cervical spine is vital. And so I wasn't comfortable with the manipulation of those areas. I felt like, personally, receiving it and also, you know, applying that in practice. Excuse me. So what I wanted to do is find procedures that would be very specific, very gentle for that area of the spine. Because certainly if I adjusted a baby's atlas, you know, I didn't want to feel like I was turning their head too far or doing anything like that. And when I started studying Nuka, it fit the bill. It's very mathematical, it's biomechanical, it's a lot of physics involved, X-ray physics, X-ray analysis. I don't know if that sounds fun to you, but it's not, it's scary.
Yes, yeah.
and compared to everything else that I studied, some of the procedures are really intense and mechanical or, you know, XYZ axis oriented, very, very technical, but Nuka was on a different level. And I wanted that. I wanted to know a very specific, a very cool way, a very gentle way to adjust the upper cervical spine and be a good doctor in that area and to help people.
Right, so Nuka, you talked about the upper cervical spine.
Yeah.
That's what Nuka...
It actually stands for that. It's the National Upper Cervical Chiropractic Association.
Right, so we have some video later on in the show about, you know, how that kind of, you adjust just the top part. You don't really work with the lower parts of manipulating.
Correct.
Very much. You set it right up here and then it follows along. So just tell us exactly what Nuka is. You talked about it being gentle, you
Sure.
talked about it being different. What is it?
What it really is a system of analysis of a spinal subluxation. I know those are big words, so
Yes, please explain.
I'll break it down.
Thank you.
Really, the way I look at it is when we're in the anatomical position, when our shoulders are square, our hips are level, our legs are level. I'm not saying how we're sitting, I'm saying naturally, without trying. We're at our healthiest. We have good nerve channels. Our spine is opened up with the canals, and we got good channels for our nerves that are coming out. The brain stem is less tension on it. And we should function really well. We should move well without a lot of discomfort. Well, when we have some type of injury, and I think later on you'll see in some of the patients we brought here today, that it could happen at birth, or it could happen when you're a little bit older, or it could happen when you're in your 50s or 60s. But what I'm referring to is some type of physical or some type of trauma that throws you off that normal alignment. And if you will, we could call that a defensive alignment or defensive posture. And that's the body's mechanism to protect the central nervous system. So when we see that, we see a short leg, and I can measure that, and so could you really. A short leg, a high and low hip, a twisted pelvis, the head and neck will be out of alignment. And so that's what I refer to as a subluxated spine or a defensive posture. So it's actually like a safe mode. It's like if your house got struck by lightning, the breakers kick off so you don't lose all your appliances and whatnot. So this is how I look at the spine, just going into a defensive posture so we don't injure ourselves too far. Now, if we don't completely heal and realign on our own, then what happens is we set up in those patterns. And then imagine someone who's maybe 5 years old that's misaligned from a car wreck or whatnot, and then all of a sudden they're 50 years old, they grow up around that misaligned or subluxated posture. Okay, so where I'm getting at, what Nuka is a way of analyzing that subluxation differently than other procedures. There's different methods in chiropractic, but what we do with Nuka is instead of looking at one bone and saying, I want this bone to go this way because it's out of a line. What Nuka analyzes is the skull's alignment, the atlas, the top bone in the neck, the second bone in the neck, and how that relates to your entire cervical spine. And then we compare that to the pelvis. And so we're looking at the whole thing. We're looking at how the skull relates to the whole neck and to the pelvis. So I'm measuring and analyzing that. And so when we make a correction, our goal is to return the skull to the vertical axis or straight up and down, the atlas to level or the horizontal, the shoulders square, the neck underneath the skull, and the hips square and not twisted, and the legs level. If we can return a patient or someone or a baby or whoever it could be to that normal position, then the nerves can open up, flow, function better, and that person's healthier in that position. And that's essentially what Nuka is about, is unlocking that subluxation. And specifically, what doctors will call it is an atlas subluxation.
Now,
That's
did you
what we
bring something
specialize.
that shows
Yes, I
that?
did.
Okay. If you
So
can
just so people know what this is
if
is
you
actually...
could just hold it up in the camera.
Yeah,
there you go.
you guys
Right,
see
this
that?
one right here.
Okay.
Yeah.
This here is actually a skull cut this way, okay? So that would be the face, and this would be the throat. And what we're looking at here is the back of the head there.
Okay.
Now, what I'm referring to is when we measure this, we'll see, and you can see this, out in public even. You'll see people with head tilts and
I've
low
been looking
shoulders.
at people since I came to
Yeah,
you.
you see it, don't you?
Well, I saw a guy last night at Huck's, as a matter of fact, thinking, his head's not straight.
Exactly. Yeah, and I see it everywhere too. You can't, it's not far. You go anywhere, you'll see it. So, and what that looks like mechanically, because we're looking through the skin, we're seeing the bones, is that the skull tips like this, and then the atlas will twist like that. And this is just an example. There's a ton of different ways the spine can misalign, and that's why we're so specific with the x-rays and whatnot. So that'll just give you an idea. Now, in that position, imagine, with the brain stem going down through the middle and the spinal cord here and the exiting nerve roots, when we got that much torque and tension in the spine, not only is it affecting the body like I described it, but it's putting a lot of interference into the nervous system. So one of the most common things we'll see with an atlas subluxation or misalignment is brain fog, headaches, migraines, jaw pain, things like that. And so when we can return that to a more balanced structure, then what we'll see is a lot of relief to the system. And what will happen is a lot of patients will experience less headaches or they'll go away. Jaws will line up better because the atlas is square and the muscles that are related to there relax. And for example, those sort of things. And what's interesting is like brain fog or fuzzy-headedness, it will clear up too because there's just not as much dissonance going on in the system. But that's in a nutshell of how I describe to you what Nuka is like.
Well, and the other chiropractors where you talk about just manipulating and popping. I mean, I'm the first to admit when I go, to my chiropractor and he, aligns my neck and pops it, it really does feel good. I mean, I can really tell that something's been done. The difference is when I came to you, you can't really. It's so gentle and so you can't really tell at first what's going on.
Right.
It's not until after you come more than once that you start to really be able to hear and be able to understand that it's moving at all.
I agree.
It wasn't until the second time that I came to you when you told me what it should sound like, and I thought, oh, okay, I hear that. That was, and then the third time I'm like, okay, I can tell that I'm not where I need to be, and you need to fix me. But it's different. But I want to know what your opinion is of other chiropractors and what they do versus what you do.
Right. Well. First and foremost, chiropractors are trained. They're educated people. They're very good at what they do, and what they do is they're not popping the neck. They're adjusting the neck, and that's different. It's not like I'll see my soccer players pick each other up and give each other bear hugs and walk on each other's backs, and it drives me nuts because I know that they don't know what they're doing. But chiropractors are trained in manipulating the spine. So first and foremost, we need to make that clear. So I don't see a lot of issue with that. Now, the methods that they use, I don't think work well for me. And I think some patients it might not either. Just like, Tammy, I'll be honest with you, everybody that walks through my door doesn't get amazing results, and that's okay. But I think some people respond different to different procedures. Like, I can't imagine a fibromyalgia patient going through a lot of manipulation and making it through, because without a lot of pain. But they do great at my office. And then there might be some patients that just don't like how light and gentle what we are and really don't give it a shot. So, I think that can happen. So one, I don't think other chiropractic procedures are necessarily bad. they're just not as specific when it comes to the neck and the atlas. And that's why I spent so much time studying Nuka, because it is not easy, and it's not easy to analyze and figure out what's going on with every individual, because we're all so different and our misalignment's different. But it's cool because it allows me to figure out a very precise way, a very gentle way, a very subtle way to help return them to a more natural position. So the way I look at it is like, instead of me forcing the body into a certain position and I'm manipulating it, I'm just being very subtle, and I'm working with the system and helping it unlock. So I feel like I'm working well with the body instead of forcing the issue. So I think sometimes that can happen when we're manipulating.
And some people might say, though, that it would maybe take longer to get results from Nuka, because like when you go and get manipulated, it's bam,
Yeah.
you're there. And for some people that
understand.
works great. And but what you're saying is that it may take longer to work with what you're doing. But for some patients, say one of the patients that you mentioned to me, someone that had multiple surgeries in their neck, it's more important maybe for that patient to have the gentleness of Nuka because of
Sure, absolutely.
the surgeries they've had.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And the other thing too, that technically speaking, one of the feel good out of a manipulation is endorphins being released from the adjustment. So with Nuka, you don't necessarily get that. Sometimes you do, and it's funny because people float out of the room. They're like, I just got adjusted. That doesn't happen to every single person. But with the manipulation, you in essence, I hate to say it, but you adjust the spine, not pop it, but you adjust the spine.
Right.
You will get a feel-good response. There's actually chemicals being released, and
Right.
it feels good. So I think that's what people would have a
Right.
hard time understanding, because you don't always experience that with the Nuka adjustment. What my goal is, though, is long-term spinal alignments and spinal balance. So what I want to see is that if I have an infant, or if I have even an adult, that they can go long distances without needing a lot of adjustments. And so when I look at that case over time, I feel like they're solid and they're holding well, and they feel well and feel healthy for a long period of time. Personally, when I was getting manipulated, I felt like I needed adjusted quite a lot, and it just didn't work well for me. I felt like I needed adjusted all the time. And like I said, after about 2 years of constantly being adjusted with manipulations, man, it really felt like I just wasn't as healthy as I should be. So for me, I really feel like it's just healthier for me to receive lighter adjustments, and I've seen that it seems to help a lot of other people too.
Well, and what you're already delving into is something that's different than other chiropractors as well. It's a very holistic approach. It's not just the manipulation of the spine. You work with them emotionally, and you work with them spiritually, and trying to help them, and the way they eat, and the way, the stress levels that they have.
Right.
So, we have in the first segment, we're going to take a break here in just a few minutes, but we're going to talk about that holistic approach right now. Just tell me how your approach holistically from the spine to make you a healthier person.
Very good. Well, the way I picture it, and when I imagine it, is that the nervous system is key to everything, okay? And anything that stresses the nervous system is going to throw you out of alignment. It's going to mess you up physically, okay? And how this looks like holistically to me is that there's three major pillars. There's physical stress, there's mental emotional stress, and there's biochemical stress. Physical stress is like traumas and accidents, but it's also exercising and being healthy, okay? Mental emotional is having good relationships with your spouse, your loved ones, your coworkers, things like that. But it's also, your relationship with God, or your prayer life, things like that. And then the third one, biochemically speaking, that's very, very much so not just nutrition and what you eat every day, but the air you breathe and the water you drink or not drink, right? So I feel like, and what I've experienced, I think doctors of chiropractic, non-doctors of chiropractic, people in healthcare, people in health, are finding that if you're balanced biochemically, you're balanced mental, emotionally, and spiritually, you're balanced physically, that you're healthier. And what we're throwing in is that we can't forget about the nervous system. And that what I'm finding is that those people that balance that out, they hold their adjustments better, they do better under care, and also because they're holding their alignment, they're expressing great nerve input to their whole body. they're also wanting to exercise more, they're wanting to eat better, they're wanting to have better relationships. And it's really a cool chemistry when you see it work. I mean, you'll see people change jobs because they're physically hurting them. People maybe break up relationships because they're negative. And you'll even see people start changing their diet or going to stop eating so much fast food because they're starting to understand that it's a process and it's a whole life experience instead of how do I feel today. And when you look at chiropractic care in my office, if you look at it in a pain model, it just doesn't work. I mean, it's cheaper to get Advil, but it really is. But if you really want health and wellness, then I think we have a lot to offer, chiropractic speaking, and Nuka just being a really awesome way of adjusting the spine. I think we have something to offer the community and the public.
Great. Well, we're going to take a break. And one of those things you mentioned was it's important to drink lots of water.
Yeah.
We're going to take a break and leave you with some of the do's that Dr. Chalke recommends for better spinal health and better health overall. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Healthy Living. I'm your host, Tammy Thompson. Again, we're talking about the form of chiropractic called Nuka. And with me again, Dr. David Chalke, the Nuka chiropractor here in town. Thanks again, David, for being with us.
Thank you very much.
We ended this segment talking about some of the do's
Sure.
that you want to do and lift with your legs, some of the common sense things.
Yeah, absolutely.
One of my favorite things is when I came to your office, back into your parking space. And I didn't do that the first time I came, and then you gave me this pamphlet. And it really does make a difference of not turning your neck and straining your neck to back out of my parking space. Sleep on your side of your back. Avoid sudden twists or turns. Stretching is important every day.
Absolutely.
It's twice a day. And to get up and move around your desk, eat healthily, get plenty of exercise, and drink lots of water. And like I said, this is more of a holistic approach. I've never heard from my chiropractor that I need to drink lots of water or eat healthily but I mean, I know that already.
Right.
I mean, those are things that I know already. It's not like he should have to tell me that.
Well, I feel, in the longer I practice, the more I'm finding that I have to say things people already know.
Really?
Because they just forget. It's
You're
just
talking
not,
about me, aren't you, David?
Yeah, exactly. No, but everybody's like that. I don't know if you want to call it that we're lazy or what, but in essence, we just forget to take care of ourselves. And I think especially as we're adults with families and kids, we take care of ourselves last. And what we want to remind people is that this is really important. In fact, if you take good care of yourself, your nervous system, and those things that we discussed, you actually will be better parents. You will be better mom and dad, and have better relationships, and just life in general will be healthier and more productive if you take care of yourself.
Okay, now see, I'm gonna be devil's advocate here.
Sure.
I'm like, okay, you're gonna tell me that I'm gonna have better relationships and better health, all because I take better care of my spine.
Yeah.
Now, why is it that you believe that? Why do you talk about it like that?
Well, again, I have to go back to the nervous system, and we do experience our life through our nervous system. So imagine if I have a misalignment in my neck, okay, and let's say I'm starting to have some tingling in my arm, my shoulder, and I just have some deep aches, and that wears on me. The energy wears on me. The stretching and just trying to get comfortable wears on me. I'm not getting a good night's sleep, So all of that requires a lot of energy. And takes a lot of your attention away from detail and the things that we should be really thinking about. So when you are functioning better and you don't have that nagging pain, because we tend to block things out, but when that's out of there, and that's just an example of pain, when that works, that person will be nicer. I mean, you're a lot nicer. I know I'm a lot nicer anyway when I don't hurt.
Right.
I just don't have that under the radar pain that's just
I mean,
kind of
something that you
nagging
might
at me.
not even realize is happening.
Yeah.
That's what strikes me about it, is that,
Yeah.
when my neck hurts or my back hurts, I mean, you
just
don't
kinda
feel
block it
good,
out.
and right, because there's so many other things I have to concentrate
Yeah.
on, but it's always there.
And I feel like too that now that the more I talk to people, that are in or are not in chiropractic at all, they tend to think that it's okay to hurt all the time, like it's normal. And I'll give you that pain is a normal signal that we need to be aware of because it tells us when something's wrong. But if you're hurting all the time, there's something not right. There's something that should be checked or addressed. And I think that a lot of people are riding in life with a lot of pain under the radar, and they are just kind of putting it off.
I think you're right, because a lot of times we don't even realize. I mean, it's just something. Well, I hurt all the time. I have to live with it, and
Right. Oh, I'm getting old. It's
Right.
arthritis.
Right.
They say that. You hear it all the time.
Right.
And
which some may be arthritis. Some of that may be
right.
True.
And if we talk about it later, I'm not sure, but just being out of a line accelerates arthritis, because really what arthritis is wear and tear. And there's different forms of arthritis, but the most common type of arthritis is degenerative arthritis. And degenerative arthritis is wear and tear. So what I'll see is I'll have let's say a 50-year-old patient, I'm looking over their neck x-rays with them, or x-rays or whatnot, and I look at 2 segments, and actually I got a model here.
Okay.
How convenient.
Yeah.
and we have this, and you see, and you might not see any vertebra, but you point this to a little kid, and they'll say that's not good. They can see the rough edges, and they can see the choked off nerves. But then we'll look 2 segments above that, and I'll see this, which is a completely healthy segment. So we see healthy nerves, healthy discs, healthy bones. So I'm looking at a 50-year-old patient. This is 70 years old, and this looks like it's 30. So they can't tell me that it's just wear and tear. Or they can't tell me, oh, I'm just getting everybody gets arthritis. I was like, well, how come this one is 30 years old and this one's 70 years old? That's 30. So we can tell there is a difference. When we have segments that don't move right and don't glide right, they wear and tear faster. And you'll see that. I see it time and time and day.
It's kind of like changing the oil in your car.
Yeah, it really is.
That preventative kind of maintenance thing.
Yeah.
Which reminds me, I need to make a note to do that to my car. But let's talk a little bit to work around to your philosophy with a holistic. You talked about, of course, physically, and then you talked about emotionally, and the other one was the biochemical. But they all work together.
Yeah.
But your philosophy ties all of that together. And when I came to your office, I want to tell you that I was very impressed.
Thank you.
The first of the show, if you're just joining us, I've known David for 30 years. And, just the fact that, talking to you now, I've learned so much about you just coming to your office. Things that I would not even think about learning about a doctor when I go and see them. I learned about, the way you see life. I learned about your spirituality, that you talked to me and how that relates to my spine. And it was actually very refreshing, and I wanted to tell you that, and I wanted to tell you that while we were on television, so that people would know that it was a very different experience. And so just tell me a little bit about your philosophy and how it ties into what you do.
Well, I guess when you speak of philosophy and life philosophy, I think that's why I love what I do so much, is because it ties into my world. It makes sense to me. And I want it to make sense to everybody, but it doesn't always, because people experience life a little differently. But, I've always felt like a deeper connection. To me, there's no question there's a God, And when I got into science, to me, that's just examples of how awesome that power is, And when I think, everything I learned in chiropractic school was just fascinating to me. I mean, in biology and science, and granted, I wasn't a straight A student, but, I loved it. I thought, this is cool, And when I look at the human body, and we come from 2 cells, and the average person's like 700 trillion cells from 2. And I just see the magnificence in that, the beauty in that. And then when I came across chiropractic, and I'm like, wow, this nerve stuff is awesome. So interference makes us sick. And I can say, it makes sense to me. So when I started grasping that, and again, when I went to school, I was a pretty healthy guy. I mean, I never went to the chiropractor, and I was not on any medicine. I mean, for most instances, if you're healthy, you don't take drugs, And that's just how I was. And so this new way of living, and living healthier and getting aligned and checking for misalignment, or what we call subluxation or nerve interference, was just kind of really radical at first for me. but it really fit into how I looked at and viewed life. And that's what I really enjoy about going to work. And in fact, it's if you turn the TV on and get on the internet, it's doesn't take too long to get bummed out, But when I go to work, I get cheered up because I get to work with people, help them understand why they're getting better, and it's really gratifying for me to say, listen, you know what, you're healing yourself. I'm just helping you out, and I'm glad to do that. And it kind of empowers people, and I think part of my job is try to inspire and empower, but that's hard to do. It's really hard to do, but I enjoyed being a part of that, and it's helped me too because, the last 3 or 4 years, I've gone on a health hiatus where I was where I was like hardly, I wasn't eating right and too much fast food, and now just being around my patients on a daily basis helps remind me and what I'm teaching that I need to live a better life too. So it's not, because I can be hypocritical too. You might see me, somewhere I shouldn't be eating. Exactly. And I love those fries,
right,
but you know what? They're just so bad. And right now I'm working with a group of guys, some of my closest friends, and we're doing a workout program together, and we've been doing it for 3 weeks. And it's exciting to me that we're getting healthier. We're watching what we're eating. We're dropping the sodas, and that's really, I would say lately that has been a big focus for me because I want my patients to know that, hey, there's a different way.
What I preach.
I'm trying to practice what I preach,
right.
and it's working, and you will be healthier, you'll be happier if you do these things too. But I'm also at a place now, I think, where I'm okay with what people want because it's very easy for me to enforce my will onto you and say, Tammy, you better make every adjustment. You need to eat right and do that. But I like to come to people and just give them some information and then say, how healthy do you want to be? If you want to be an elite athlete, I can help you get there. I can help you with some strategies. You want to be just, a strong, athletic, healthy person, that's a different strategy. If I'm okay. I want to be able to eat some things I don't need to eat and stuff like that. That's okay too. I guess what I'm getting at is not everybody wants to be 100% healthy. Not everybody wants to be that.
They don't want to work
athlete.
that hard.
They don't, and that's okay. And that's okay, and I'm finally okay with that.
To do that for yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
To let your patients do
that was
what they
hard
want
for
to do.
me
Right.
because I was an athlete all my life, and I'm like, man, now I'm just like, relatively speaking, compared to where I was in college, like, geez. But I like to help bring people to that point where what is it you really want, and then show them how to get it. And when that happens, I think it's enlightening to them. It's and
it's empowering to.
It really is.
Right.
Yeah, because they're like, oh, okay. It doesn't have to be this way. And and like you said, if we don't apply those things, we're just going to stay in the same boat. And chiropractically speaking, with Nuka and the things that I do, I tell you, the people that don't, that's fine, that's okay, but they won't hold as well. They won't do as well under care, and they probably will need a lot more adjustments and things like that.
Well, let's take about what to kind of expect when you come into your office. We have about 4 minutes left in this segment before we get to your patients who talk about how Nuka has changed their lives. We went to your office, and you kind of, we went through more quickly than you would with a new patient.
Sure.
Because you told me they would spend like an hour the first visit going through and talking about the things that exactly what Nuka is and how you're going to work on them. But we have some video.
Sure.
And the first thing that you did, of course, was take x-rays.
Yeah.
And so, just tell me a little bit about what we're seeing here and why it's and you took it from 3 different angles.
Yes. And what this is a Nuka series, and what the view we're setting you up here is called a nasium. And this angle shows me whether the atlas, remember that first bone in your neck, whether it's slipped to the right or to the left and to what degree or magnitude. It also allows me to figure out what's going on with the lower neck. And that's literally all 7 vertebrae in your neck. So that's what this view is so important for.
Right. You put the little screws on my head there to hold me still.
Yeah, that's to hold you steady. Because honestly, what's really cool about what I do is if I don't get an accurate picture of how you stand and work and live every day, then the adjustment won't be as good.
And then you type in these numbers.
Yeah, that's standard X-ray equipment. Where what we'll do is type in the right frequency and whatnot to get the best quality picture.
And then you also take it from behind me.
This is
I'm a little claustrophobic. This one was a little scary for me.
No, it can be if you're a little claustrophobic. It doesn't hurt. Again, if you're watching this, this doesn't hurt at all. But what we're doing is...
But I'm a wimp, that's what you're saying. I get it.
But we're being very specific here, and that's what the clamping doesn't hurt.
Look at my face, I know, I'm like,
nervous.
oh.
But this is called the vertex, and what that's for, it's really, we're looking down, it's like a satellite view, and if you want to think of the atlas as a donut, or a steering wheel in your car, we want that atlas to be level, just like your steering wheel in your car should be level. So in that picture, I'm looking for rotation, rotation of the atlas.
And then the only other one that you took was the from the side. And what are we looking for here?
Excuse me.
Just again another angle of just the top. Is
It
all
is,
you did.
and actually these aren't taken in the right order. I would take that first.
Okay, I edited it, so
that's
it's
okay.
wrong.
That's okay. There's several reasons. One, for that picture, we want to know what we call an S line, which tells me what angle to take the nasum on, or Miss Hazel, my X-ray tech, to take it on.
Right.
And what it also shows is arthritis, degeneration, damage, any bone pathologies, things like that we look for as well.
And then we went into the next clip is where you were actually then reading
and
those,
analyzing the films.
which I was so impressed. I mean, you have to do math, David. I would be absolutely lost. But you were doing markings and protractors and all of this stuff.
And that's what's exciting to me about Nuka is like, man, the way I think of the atlas when I was studying chiropractic, it's like I didn't understand how twisting the neck would be real efficient. And then when I found analysis for it, I mean, it made sense to me. It is complicated. The atlas and the skull and the C2, it's not a real simple mechanism.
Right.
And so I really fell in love with the Nuka system and analysis system. So what we do is we're really figuring out exactly what is going on with your atlas, because your misalignment is going to be different than somebody else.
Right, and that's why this is very important for you to mark all of these. And you told me I had a wonderful neck, by the way.
Yes, you did.
Yeah, Tara's mad, your sister's mad, because you said that mine looked good. And the last thing that we did then was the adjustment. And this is where, it was very kind of strange, because I was used to going to my chiropractor, which, again, I like the way that felt. You talked about the endorphins. But it was very gentle. The first time I came, I really couldn't tell until the second time. And you told me it felt kind of like, or sounded like gristle. And then I could hear it then when you were adjusting me, because it was very subtle and very gentle.
And it's very subtle, and it's again, it's kind of like under the radar. You don't hear a loud pop.
Right.
And in fact, what's really cool about Nuka is, like, if you go to any other Nuka chiropractor, and which you could, because you have with your listing, and you could go to any Nuka chiropractor in the country and get adjusted like I adjust you, which is really awesome. But what it does is that some of them sound different.
Really?
Yeah. Dr. Jack Stockwell, who he's really took me on, and Craig Dawson, Dr. Dawson in Salt Lake City, they trained me in Nuka. We all adjusted differently.
Wow.
Dr. Jack's had a loud click.
Really?
I mean, you could hear it across the room, but it's just different how I think every doctor adjusts.
Well, that just could show that everybody is different.
Yeah, it really is.
But the primary thing is that you do take a holistic approach. You do take a wellness point of view, and that it is very subtle and very gentle. And while you say it doesn't work for everyone, you have had great success with very many people.
Absolutely.
So we're going to leave you this segment, and I appreciate you coming on and talking to me about that.
Thank you for having me. I had a good time.
Your mother also will be happy with me because she wanted me to do this show for a very long time. And we have some people here, 3 people who have come to you and had great success, and we're just going to talk about their stories.
Great.
But we're going to be right back, and we're going to leave you with some of those don'ts that you should not do in order to have better spinal health. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Thank you. Welcome back to Healthy Living. I'm your host, Tammy Thompson. On this segment, I have 3 guests with me who are patients of Dr. Chalke's and have had their lives changed by his practice. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
Fair to say. I have with me Brian Krueger and Beth Crowder and Heather and Potter Anderson. Thank you all for coming. I appreciate it. We're just going to talk about your stories and where you were before you saw Dr. Chalke and now after, and how Nuka has helped you. So Brian, we're going to start with you. How long have you been seeing Dr. Chalke?
Probably for a little over a year now.
A little over a year now. So, and Beth?
2 years.
2 years. And Heather?
About 10 months.
So you were seeing him from the time he was born?
Potter was 2 weeks old.
2 weeks old. So just tell me a little bit about Potter and what his problem was and why you needed to see Dr. Chalke.
When Potter was born, we had a birth emergency called shoulder dystocia, where his shoulders were too wide to fit through the birth canal. And he had to be pulled out. And what his condition is called obstetrical brachial plexus palsy. The brachial plexus nerves in his left arm were stretched so that his left arm hung limp at his side.
So he couldn't move his left arm at all?
He had no movement, only some finger movement, but no use of his arm at all.
Okay, so this was just, less than a year ago.
Right.
So what was your first step in trying to help Potter?
Well, we, went through a lot of heartache and grief, wondering what we needed to do. Scheduled an appointment with a pediatrician. And then Dr. Chalke said, hey, I think I can help him. And, for lack of a better word, considering the violence that happened to him when he came into the world, I thought, oh, chiropractic, that's, cracking, popping. But Dr. Chalke was so gentle and wonderful, and we had results.
You want Todd to come get him?
The day of his first adjustment. So
You could tell a difference the day
we could
of.
tell a difference, yeah. It
Okay,
was
and so
great.
something that you were going to do was you were actually going to have surgery, right? You were thinking about that.
If it were necessary, we went every month to St.
Daddy's
Louis.
calling you. We're going to get his daddy up here to get him because he was so good before we started, bless his heart. He just couldn't last, but you
impatient.
could see him being able to move his arm.
It's incredible. Went and saw neurosurgeons, and we saw Dr. Chalke a couple times a week, and then once a month. We now see him once a month, and everything is working really well.
That's amazing. That's amazing. A lot better than surgery.
Yes, a lot better than surgery.
A lot better than surgery because that's very scary. I mean, even for an adult, much less an infant, to have to go through that. And that's why David said, Dr. Chalke said that he wanted to do Nuka because he can do that kind of procedure on an infant. Mary Beth, you're like the next. No, Mary Beth, that's right. I got it right. I'm gonna get it right. You're the next step up from the young child. You are how old?
I started having migraines when I was 6, and about 2 years ago is when I started going to see Dr. Chalke. I was put on all different kinds of medicine, and none of it really seemed to help. We started going to specialists in Louisville, and he just wanted to give me more medicine. And then people at my dad's work recommended us to see Dr. Chalke. So.
Okay. So how bad were your headaches? What was an average day for you like?
They were really bad. Pretty much in 7th grade, I had to miss school like the whole year because
Really?
I had them like pretty much every day.
You had a headache every day.
Mm-hmm.
And these weren't, if you've ever had a migraine before, these aren't like regular headaches. These are debilitating
Yeah.
headaches. I mean, just give me an example of what your day would be like when you woke up. What would happen?
Well, I'd wake up, I'd try to go to school, and then the sound would get really loud, and my head would be banging, is what it'd feel like, and I'd feel sick, and I just had to go home.
Just had to go home. So that was probably hard for you. You're in the
Yeah.
7th grade, and all your friends are there, and you can't go. And so you and your mom told me you went to specialists, and they wanted to slow down your
Nervous system.
to try and get rid of these headaches.
Yeah.
Yeah, as I believe your mother's words were, no way. I believe that's what she said.
No
No
way.
way, we're not going to do that. So you went to Dr. Chalke,
Yes.
and what happened? After how long before you started to really be able to tell the difference?
Well, actually, when I went before, and I had a headache when I went before, and
Really?
they just, when I got home, it was gone.
The headache
Pretty
was
much.
gone?
Yeah.
Wow. So you go, how often do you go now?
Now I go probably every 6 weeks.
Every 6 weeks. Okay, that really does say something for this type of treatment. Do you the gentleness of it, do you like that part of
Yes.
it? Had you ever been to a chiropractor before,
No.
Dr. Chalke?
I never liked the sound of people just popping their fingers, and
Oh,
it just that freaked me out. So
Really?
yeah,
Much less somebody doing that to your neck.
yeah, really.
Wasn't something for you, right?
Yes.
Right. Great. Okay, Brian. Now you're the next step up. But I'm not going to say that you're old. No, I'm just kidding. But you've been on different shows before here with us. So just tell me, you said about a year that you've been seeing him. What was your life like before, and why did you need to go and see Dr. Chalke?
Well, what I was experiencing was related to a car wreck that I had where I suffered whiplash and subsequently developed 4 bulging discs in my neck. Went to what I call a regular chiropractor for a period of time, and that kind of it helped out.
It did help.
To a degree, but then although my condition or my symptoms subsided for a period of time, they kind of re-emerged, and actually I was referred to Doctor Chalke by my mother, who had been a patient of his. When I went to him the first time, I was suffering from migraine headaches, tingling and numbness in my left jaw, left arm, loss of strength in my hand at times, things like that, migraines, pain in my neck, loss of mobility.
So you ran the gamut.
Yes.
To where you had the migraine headaches like Mary Beth. You couldn't move your arm as much as you had before. And this is from a car wreck, you said?
Yes.
Okay.
It was a car
so
wreck.
Keep going. Sorry.
First time I went to Dr. Chalke, he actually told me that probably, since I had gone to a standard chiropractor before, that what he was going to do to me, I probably would think that he was a quack at first.
Really? Yeah.
Because it was nothing like what I had experienced before. Minimal force involved, minimal anything involved, really, amount of time spent, and had my doubts the first time I went until the next day, and I was actually a little bit stiff from what he had done, and I was surprised. But again, the results were almost immediate.
And so how often do you go?
Right now I go about once every 8 to 10 weeks probably.
So everybody is different. You go about once a month, every 6 weeks, 8 to 10 weeks, you said. So your lives before, and you mentioned about being a quack. I mean, I know, like I said, I've known David just about his whole life. So, for me to say that he's a quack, I mean, that just is something I couldn't say because, I just love him to death. But when I first went, I thought, I don't hear anything. I don't hear anything, and I don't really feel anything. And he's like, well, I feel it, and I can feel you moving. I'm like, okay.
I can actually hear the bone moving when I go in
What's
for
it sound like to
sessions.
you?
It just sounds like a very minimal clicking in my left ear, but I can't hear it.
Well, and then the second time we were there with the camera crew the first time that I went. And so he's talking to me and really telling me what's going on and what's happening. So there was a lot of talking as he was trying to work through the procedure. The second time I was by myself, and it was much more quiet. And I thought, well, he said, you hear this sound, it's like a clicking. And I thought, I can hear that. I really could hear it. So it was a very different experience for me because I too have been to other chiropractors. And while that felt very good, and to have my neck manipulated, as David said, this is very different. And what it's done for me is that I told him I had a big knot in the back, where your neck comes down. He told me that I was okay though, that was all right. But that on either side of that was so sore. I could barely touch it. The muscles were very tense there. And now it doesn't seem to protrude as much, and it doesn't hurt on either side of my protrusion, I call it. And I've only been 3 times. So it's very unique, I think. And so I keep going back because I like the gentleness of it. But he told me that if I hadn't had the camera crew, that you have an extensive time for him to explain to you what is going on. Because if you and you've never been to a chiropractor, and Mary Beth, you hadn't either, but Brian, you had, and you go in and you know, I had extensive x-rays when I went, but then when you go in, you get your adjustment and you go. And David has a quiet room where you go and you sit with the, look at all of you smiling. Yeah, I know, because the quiet room is like the best, isn't it?
Yeah.
You go and you have ice packs and you sit in the room and you relax and you just,
If I had the time, I'd spend a lot more in there.
I know, I just want a quiet room in my home. I don't have one though. But just to tell me how it's changed for you to see your little boy, Heather, in just this small amount of time. How is it different for you and for your husband, Todd, to see your little boy different now?
Oh, it's wonderful to go from complete non-use of an arm to, you know, an almost normal kid. I mean, it's just incredible.
Mm-hmm. Did you think when you were there that this was going to happen? I mean, what was your first impression when you went? I mean, because you have a baby, and I don't know of any other chiropractors that would be adjusting a baby.
Right.
So what was your first impression?
Well, I was really worried at first because, you know, I have a 2-week-old infant who's been injured, and I'm thinking, now what?
Now, was he 2 weeks old when he first adjusted him?
He was 2 weeks old when he first
2
saw it.
weeks old?
Yes.
I mean, they can't even hold their heads up at, you know.
It was incredible. And, you know, Dr. Chalke was so gentle, and he explained to me the entire process. And I asked him, I said, is this voodoo? What are you doing?
Really? Voodoo.
So, I mean, it's an incredible process. And Potter responded really, really well to it.
I mean, from the first treatment, or did it take a few?
The first treatment, we could see some improvement. I mean, it was slight, but we could see it. Mm-hmm. And then as we continue on, there's, of course, more and more improvement as the nerves heal, and Dr. Chalke helps with that. So.
See, because there's a big trust. I mean, with the spine in itself, I mean, that's like your main, it's everything. When that's not working right or that's messed up, life is not good. And so you're entrusting a 2-week-old child, but your next option, you said, was probably surgery?
Potentially surgery.
Potentially
yes.
surgery. And you had seen some other children who had gone through surgeries.
Right.
And not to say that that isn't what maybe some children do need, is to have
Right.
surgery. But that wasn't your option. So explain to me, you know, that choice. Okay, I'm going to give this a try. This is voodoo. How do...
I mean, it was, you know, we were desperate to try anything that would work, because it's horrifying to think that this baby's going to have to, you know, have surgery. Mm-hmm. It's just difficult to explain how you feel about that.
Right.
And we're just very pleased with the results. And
Well, I saw him. He was moving and
it's great.
shaking and lifting his arms and doing all of that. That's wonderful. So, Mary Beth, tell me your life now. 2 years with Dr. Chalke and Nuka, and you said you did not like even to hear people cracking their own knuckles.
Yeah.
That creeped you out, you said. So tell me how your life is different now.
Well, now I can actually go to school, be in my first year in high school, and it is amazing.
So do you have
and-
headaches now at all, or?
I will always have headaches, but I don't have them as often or as bad as I did, so that's wonderful.
So he's given you your high school years
Yes.
pain-free with and medications. Are you on any of those? No medicines of any kind.
Not for migraines.
So were you were on a lot of medications before?
I was on all different kinds. They tried one, it didn't work. They'd give me another one, and it wouldn't work. So.
And how did the medications make you feel versus how you feel now?
Okay, well, the medications would actually make me feel different, and I didn't like that because I could tell something was going on, and I didn't like it. So.
So I have a friend who suffers from migraines, and she doesn't want to take the medication either because she says it makes her, she says stupid, because it's a fog. She's almost in a fog, and she can't think, and she can't
Yes.
concentrate, and she doesn't like the fact that it makes her feel that way. Was that how it worked for you? Just
Pretty much, yeah. You don't feel yourself, and you don't like that at all.
so now you feel like yourself?
Yes.
Well, that's really great. And the point that I wanted to make, when you go to a doctor, you go to a chiropractor and you get manipulated, you know, your mind says, oh, I'm better. I can tell. because you want to be better. And it takes a while before you can actually maybe tell the difference. But 2-week-old babies don't have that capability. They're either better or they're not. And they don't have that capacity to make themselves think one way or the other. And so that's what I think is impressive about him adjusting, someone as young as Potter, because you can tell the difference, and he doesn't have any of that input into it. And but then your headaches are gone. And how are you doing, Brian?
I'm doing great.
What about the tingling and the pain? And
I haven't had any tingling since I started going to Doctor Chalke at all.
no tingling?
No.
What about do you have headaches still, or?
Periodically, but I really don't think that most of them are associated with my neck. It's just from stress and work-related stuff and whatever.
You know what he would say about that?
Yeah, I know.
I know. He's got that holistic approach going.
That's right.
And if you're looking, he's actually in the control room right now. If you take a shot, you can see that all of our legs are not crossed. We're not crossing our legs. They're all down here at the ankles, because he said that's the best way to go. What I found is that I'm concentrating more on those don'ts and those do's to try to make me better. I have to work on that eating better thing, though, and that stress level. But, it makes you have a conscious thought about those things that, you wouldn't think that you would get from a chiropractor. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
One thing about, you mentioned stress. One of the things that I was having problems doing was bow hunting. I couldn't turn my neck far enough to shoot a bow.
Really?
But because I'm able to go to him, I'm able to enjoy that again.
So he gave you your high school years back. Potter can move his arm, and you can bow hunt. And my knot doesn't hurt. So that's what's great. And it was so gentle and so different. And it really is something that if you're having trouble and having problems, whatever it may be, everyone is different. You should at least try Nuka and see if it's for you. It may not be, but it could be the answer to give you your life back. So I want to thank all of you for joining me. I appreciate you telling your stories. Thank you so much. We'd like to invite you to watch our show again. It's Healthy Living. You can go to www.paducah2.org, and our shows are there, as are all the other Paducah 2 shows. Thank you so much for joining me, and if you are having trouble, maybe you would like to see Dr. David Chalke. Join us again next time.